Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the Floral Arranging Makeaway Kit. So this kit comes with floral arranging tools as well as some basic guidelines for how to use the tools, as well as some tips on floral arranging. So we have our kit here. Everything folds up very nicely, and we'll be going over each of these tools. So the first thing we have in our roll-up kit is some floral tape. Normally comes in a dark to light green color. As you pull it, it becomes whitish gray, and that is because it activates a wax on the outside so that it will stick to itself. It can be torn off with your fingers or can be cut with scissors. Here we have a pair of Floral Shears. These are to be used on actual live flowers only, not on any wired silk flowers. So it has a little lock on it so that you don't have to worry about it opening up, and then a little tip to cover up the sharp ends. A pair of wire cutters. These are to be used on wire only for when you're using silk flowers or flowers that have a wired stem. Next is some U-pins. These are used to hold live or silk flowers onto a floral block. They are very sharp, so be careful with those. They can be bent to hold narrow stems. And then we also have some floral wire to be used with live or silk flowers. It's a thin green wire that you'll use your wire cutters to cut. And then it is pretty flexible, so you can kind of bend it in any direction, and it bends pretty easy. Watch out for the sharp tips on that as well. And now I will go over some of the tips and tools. So wire cutters, floral pins, floral picks, any of those things can be used, and it tells you a little bit about how to use the floral wire, floral tape, and the picks, just as some easy directions in case you forget what each of those is used for. I also have a book that I read before I filmed this called Silk Flower Arranging, that just goes over some of the basics of floral arrangements, different kinds, different styles. So that could be a helpful book for you to check out. It just goes over different types of vases, different types of arrangements, as well as how to make them yourself. So this could be a good book for inspiration, and I definitely used it to inspire what I did today, which was a basic bush shape arrangement, and some different types of seasonal arrangements are listed in there, and different kinds of flowers that are used for each season. So check that book out as well. These are the flowers. I got them from Joann's. This is typical floral flowers for an arrangement for the fall, as well as some greenery I got to go with it to fill out some of the shape. So we're going to get started with that. I used a typical 16-ounce mason jar to give it some of that rustic feel as well. And so as you can see here, the flowers really hang over the top by a large margin. So I'm just going to go in and cut the flowers down to a size that would fit in this jar best. So I'm just going to pick out one of these stems, kind of use this as a visual measurement of how much I need to get rid of, and then I will cut it to fit in the jar. So that's about how much I want to cut off at the end, about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. So I do that. I ran into some trouble here because of the plastic coating that's over the wire. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're doing this, that you may have to switch to a pair of shears or something to cut through that thick plastic, which I do later in this video. And then I kind of just visually guesstimate about the different sizes for these. I don't cut all of them the exact same size because I want some of the flowers to be a little bit taller than the other ones. And so that may just be something you have to learn as you go along about how tall you want some. You want some to be shorter, you want some to be taller, and kind of just as you're putting this together, kind of visualize which ones you want to be taller and which ones you want to be shorter as you're putting each stem into the glass. So here I switch over to the shears to cut through the plastic, because that plastic is really difficult to cut through with the wire cutters and was giving me a hand cramp. So there are also some of the sprigs that I'm doing right now. I leave a little bit taller than the flowers. I also leave some of the little fall sprigs taller than the flowers. And then I leave some of the flowers taller that are bigger, and then make some of the shorter ones smaller and some of the more broad ones smaller and taller. So you'll just see once I get this. I pull out the wire on accident from this sprig as I'm trying to cut it, and so I have to reinsert the wire into the flower, which is okay, happens. So I'm making this one shorter, and then I'm making the next one taller. All right, and then I'm just doing, this is just a way that I put them in the jar. They're not quite ready yet. I'm going to have to arrange them some more. So that's what I do here, is I move some flowers around in different directions. So all of my sprigs ended up kind of on one side, so I moved them around next. But first I'm going to finish cutting the different parts of the leaves out. I used the shears to cut through the plastic on this as well. But then I realized I could just use the wire cutters. I would just have to move them a bit. And this is thinner wire, so you can, if you're having trouble getting them to separate, you can crimp them and then bend them back and forth like that to try and get them to come off. Whatever way you do it, as long as you don't use the scissors on the stems, should be fine. So I'm having to bend this one back and forth. And these are my green leaves. I just tried to go through the wire cutters with these because they were just thinner and easier for me to cut, but I did have to bend some of them back and forth quite a bit to get them to separate. So now I have all my greenery. I'm going to start to arrange my flowers. Like I said earlier, this is called a bush, which just means that you have all of the flowers tightly in the center and then letting the greenery or the sprigs of leaves hang down off the side. So here I move some of my flowers around. You can see that big orange one is taller than my yellow flowers. My sprigs were all on one side, so I moved them to the other side. I have my chrysanthemums both on one side because they're a little bit heavier. And then I just add in the greenery, those leaves, in equal thirds, so one on each of the thirds that I had mapped it out in my head. But basically I put 3 green around, and then I put the 3 silver in between them, so just I tried to make it balanced, and I think that's a big part of floral arranging, is balancing out. You don't want all of the green on one side and all of the grayish leaves, which is lamb's ear, on the other side, so I just tried to insert them evenly around. And I go back in and I kind of bend the branches with the green leaves down, just so they're not sticking up, as you can see, right into the middle of the arrangement. And so a lot of this is just fixing it to the way that you like it and the way that you think it looks best. There's no hard and fast rules when it comes to floral arranging. It is an art form, so just making it look the way that you want is important, and not having to worry too much about the details of what any one book or any one article or picture looks like. It's about how you think it looks best. And so this is the mostly finished. I do a little bit of tucking, kind of bending some of the flowers down so they're not all at the same height. Just arranging them, moving that poppy around. But yeah, once you get it to a place that you like, this is what it looks like kind of at the bottom where you can really see the leaves. The next step I use is some floral tape to kind of keep it bunched together. And so that if it falls over or whatever, they don't all fall out or separate or get messed up. So I just grab the whole thing in one hand, and I grab my floral tape, and I just start to wrap it around. As you're wrapping it, you'll want to kind of pull it, not too tight because it will break or rip, but enough that it starts to turn that kind of grayish white, and that means that the wax on the tape is activated, which means that it will start to stick to itself. It is not so sticky that it is going to be 100% stuck, but sticky enough that it will stick to itself and keep it tight. Just enough that your arrangement won't slip around and come undone. So I'm just doing that here, pulling and wrapping. You don't need a lot, but just enough to get it to stick together. And then I use the scissors here, but I ended up just ripping it. And so I just give it one last good once over with my hand, kind of pushing it together to get it to stick to itself. And then I just place it back in the jar. Then once it's back in the jar, it's almost a little too tight, so I spend a couple of minutes kind of rearranging and getting them kind of flexed out a little bit more so it doesn't look too tight, if that makes sense. And so I'm just moving them around. But yeah, that's the finished product. As you can see, it's up to you really what kind of flowers you choose. For the fall, I chose kind of pinkish reds, orange, yellows to kind of match the little sprigs of leaves that are in there, as well as some green leaves. And that's about it. I have included some still photos that you can look at of it next. I ended up adding this little orange ribbon around it to try and pull some of the orange down into the bottom. But yeah, overall I think this is a fun kit to own or to borrow for floral arranging, and I hope to see some really cool arrangements you guys make with our kit. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.